if you don't stretch, if you don't go for what you want, I think ultimately you'll pay the price with your happiness, with your fulfillment, with your growth and who you are. And I think the reason why I invite often people to think bigger, to stretch out, to step out of that comfort zone is because I think we all know that there's so much more beyond the limitation we impose on ourselves.
Have you ever dreamed of being an entrepreneur, but thought, nah, I couldn't possibly do it? Well, today's story is about Nenad Popadic, a French expat who found the courage to start his own business. He left France in his early 20s, became a scuba diver instructor, and eventually followed his interest in human psychology to become a mindset coach and hypnotherapist. Welcome to another episode of the X Perspective podcast. This is episode 5, and I'm your host, Raj. Today I sit down with Nenad to discuss the idea of courage from a professional as well as a personal perspective. So come with me and let's step into Nenad's mind and see his perspective on courage and what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Hi, Nenad. Welcome to the show.
Hello, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you, and I'm super excited to dive into what it means to have courage from your perspective, not only from a professional point of view, but also from your own personal experiences. So let's get started. To do that, we have to go way back to 2010.
Yes.
That's when you were 20 years old and you were in France. That is what I understand was the time where you made the most courageous decision in your life. For the listeners, what happened?
Way back when I was 20, I think what was very important to understand is that coming from where I wasn't really in a happy space. I think I was in this space where I was trying to find about myself, my life, where I want to go, what I want to do. I was more of the introverted, shy, lacking confidence guy. And I was in this space where I didn't really like, my life, what I was doing, where I was heading, was confused about a lot of things. And I had this idea that just came. I don't even remember exactly how it came, but it came of like, oh, hey, go to Australia, do this, work and holiday visa 1 year and, learn English, try something, just travel, do something. And that was the initial idea. So I looked it up. I went on Google, looked it up. What's the visa about, how it is. And that afternoon, it was a Saturday afternoon, I remember, because I applied it. And for most of the things, I had to translate and I had to, just understand what were the questions for the visa and stuff. And then a couple of hours later, I got an email. And it was written, visa granted. And I was like, what does granted mean?
Right, because you were still working on your English.
Correct. So I was like, what does granted mean? I was like, it's too fast. I couldn't just, I've gotten the visa already, and it was like all electronic. So I was like, going on dictionary and trying to find, it was like approved. I was like, wow. So later that evening, I was talking to my brother and we're like, we were actually having some drinks over at a friend's place. And I was like, I just got my visa for Australia. And I was like, what are you talking about? It was such like a out of the ordinary things to do for like somebody like me, so to speak, right? And
why do you say somebody like you?
Because I was more like, safe, introverted, not taking too many risks, that type of person back then. And I didn't realize all of this became very real the moment I got the visa. And the moment I was like, whoa, am I really going to do this? I mean, I got it now. It's valid a year. You have 1 year to go. And very quick after that, I decided, okay, I want to do this. I want to do this. And this is where the fear starts to kick in. I started to telling people about it. I started telling my parents about it. I was starting to plan ahead. The goal was to leave somewhere around October because this is when it starts to become like summertime, good time to go to Australia because the weather is reversed.
And what time was it when you got the visa?
It was very early that year.
Okay, so you had a couple months.
Yeah, it was like, I think I had like pretty much 8-9 months, more or less. And you start to be into this thing, and this is where, like, oh my god, fear starts to building. But I think the real moment where everything started to really become shaky was a couple of weeks before, when I broke my arm. I was playing handball back then, and it was what was to be my last game, so to speak. And I had a bad fall, and my wrist just broke. And first I was like, oh, it's nothing. And then I went to do x-ray, and I was like, oh, it's broken. You need a cast. It's going to take up to 2 months. And had a trip, it was like a month into it. I was supposed to fly. Everything was booked. Everything was, ready to go. And it was like all of a sudden that I was freaking out, because I was like, is this a sign not to go? Is this the universe time? Like you start to go into this very doubtful moment where your parents start to be like questioning, are you really sure you want to do this? What are you going to do? Can you cancel? Can you get the money back? So everything became very, very entangled and messy. And in my mind, like, there was just like one day where there was this moment of clarity where I knew that if I postpone, I'm not going. Like, I had this moment where I knew, like, if I give myself a way out, it wasn't going to happen.
Like ever.
Like, it felt like it's over, it's done, because then I had just a few months before the visa expired. So I knew, like, that opportunity was, there was a period of time. And I decided to tell my parents, I'm going to go. And what I decided to do is that, okay, so if I'm going to learn English, I'm going to sign up for a couple of weeks into a part-time English school, which I felt like was a fantastic idea looking back. But it was difficult to make the decision, and every day you have like all the doubt, all those thoughts. There's so much uncertainty to go with a broken arm and feel like crippled in a way,
But not only did you have the broken wrist, you were also trying to learn English. So English was going to be a barrier when you first got to Australia. And then on top of that, you had to explain to your parents and even your friends maybe why you were leaving. And then you had your own personal anxieties about leaving. So altogether, and let's not forget, you were 20 years old. And had you been to a different country by that time?
I did. I had, when I was 18, I had a trip in Japan,
Nice.
which was really good. But that was completely different, because it was like, it's a year, there's money involved, there's a lot of things involved. But you're right. I think it was definitely the most courageous things I ever done in my first 20 years of my life. Like, that was like so out of the ordinary, so out of character, so out of the timeline I was on, and I think that's the reason why he shook up my entire life after that. I think it was a catalyst for all the things that came after that.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to dive into that. But before we get into that, let's go back to Australia. In Australia, you stayed there for a bit after you finished your education. I know that you found some jobs to stay in the country, and then eventually you fell in love with diving, became a scuba diver instructor for 2.5 years, and spent your time diving in Australia as well as Thailand. Yeah. But all along, there was something else in your heart. You knew that this was not really your path. What was it that really, truly interested you?
I always had this curiosity for psychology, personal development, personal growth, the human mind, all those mechanics. And even back then, I was reading books, going to seminars or those like weekend workshops, like little things. But it was just for me, it was a way to cure my own shyness, my own low self-esteem, my own flaws or things that were making my life, difficult with dating or with people or with taking courageous decisions, all those things, right? And I felt like, going to diving, which is a phenomenal job. It's a great lifestyle. You work in beautiful places, and you get to see a lot of cool stuff with a lot of cool people who just want to enjoy. So it's very enjoyable, but it's like, it's very temporary, and that's going into it from day one. I already knew that that's not going to be it, but I enjoyed it. I learned a lot from it, but I didn't know what it was. like now of course, like it was like maybe right in front of me, obvious, but it took a while. And even though I was doing many courses and reading and like listening to audiobooks and all of this, it took a while for me to have that realization. And it only came because I was lucky to have the right mentor at the right time to kind of show you the way a little bit, or give you perspective, or show you what you're not seeing. And this came, when I was one day when I was just like complaining, basically, I'm doing this, it's great, but I just don't know what I really want to do. I was just like complaining a little bit in this moment, and it was like, hey, and here you are, you're spending all this time, all this money, all these courses, these books. Why don't you do something with that?
So your mentor told you,
Yeah.
why don't you pursue your passion for
Yeah.
psychology? And then what did you decide to do?
It was a bit of a aha moment, because you're like, it makes a lot of sense. But, straight away you got this but. I don't have the certification or the knowledge, or where do I start? Your mind just comes up with so many excuses of like, it's impossible, or it's not, it's a big leap again. You go from diving into something like this. But the idea stuck with me, and this was the time when I was like doing a lot of neuro-linguistic programming courses, NLP, hypnotherapy, right? And so funny enough, I was already enrolled in those programs, in some of them, before I actually decided to go all in. Yeah, but it was like that time where, maybe it was just kind of meant to be a little bit.
For the audience, can you just explain what is neuro-linguistics?
Yeah, neuro-linguistic programming is basically a set of knowledge and tools that enable a person to understand first how the mind works, the power of thought, your emotions, your behavior, but also how you can make some changes to create positive change in your life. So it's a set of tools and mechanics that can allow you to create a positive change in your life.
So today you run a business, you're an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
You made that big move from being an employee to getting into the world of entrepreneurship. And so what do you do?
So in simple terms, I'm a mindset coach and hypnotherapist. So I help a lot of people overcome the inhibition they have in their personality, low confidence, low self-esteem, shyness. In some way, a lot of the things I used to struggle with when I was younger, and a lot of things that were creating barriers for myself, for self-expression, for relationship, for money, for doing your own thing. And so that's pretty much what I do now.
So as a mindset coach, what would you say to the people your definition of courage is?
I think it's doing the thing that you're afraid to do, the thing that you really want to do, that sometimes is the right thing to do, but there's that but I don't want to, but what are people going to say, but what if I fail, but what if I don't have the money, but, and just going with it, even though you don't know what's going to happen. I think that's what I would say today is my definition of courage.
Well, I've been looking at your YouTube videos, and I noticed there are certain points you keep mentioning about courage. One of them is stepping outside of your comfort zone. Why is that important?
It's important because I think we all have a drive, a human need to evolve, grow, want more, in whichever way is it's a bit unique for all of us, but all of us are never satisfied. There's always something more, right? But I also think and I know from my own personal life that sometimes we just play safe, don't stretch, don't go for what we really want. Instead, we settle for what we think we could get. And when you end up doing that one time, two times, when it becomes just like your life, I think that's when it creates a lot of side unhappiness. You're not fulfilled. There's more out there, but you cannot play it small. You're hiding. And if you don't stretch, if you don't go for what you want, I think ultimately you'll pay the price with your happiness, with your fulfillment, with your growth and who you are. And I think the reason why I invite often people to think bigger, to stretch out, to step out of that comfort zone is because I think we all know that there's so much more beyond the limitation we impose on ourselves.
So when you decided to become an entrepreneur, how would you say you stepped out of your comfort zone? How did you stretch?
I think, being an entrepreneur, I think is the greatest spiritual journey. And I give you this, like literally, I truly believe that, because everything becomes, you become responsible for everything. When you have a job, when you show up, maybe you do your best, maybe you even care, maybe most people don't care, whatever, like they just get the paycheck, they do what's expected, and that's it. And I was in this place, when I was younger, like going the extra mile, doing what I'm not paid for, was like, oh my God, I'm not paid for this shit, And today I understand that this is such a poor mentality. It's like you want to go the extra mile, you want to improve your value, you want to be more valuable, right?
Why is that so important?
If we stay in this example of like, okay, I'm not paid to do this, then you'll never get paid more than what you do. It's a simple thing to understand, but people feel like, well, I should get paid first. But it's like when you go the extra mile, and when you show you care, or you want to learn, you want to develop, and you show you can do more than what you're doing, you're setting yourself up for opportunities for somebody to see your ability to grow, to expand, and life rewards you then. The challenge is that people will say, well, then people will take advantage of you. And they have this defensive, victim mentality. Well, they'll take advantage of me. But what they don't realize is that, okay, even if that one person don't see it, many others will. And what you give doesn't necessarily comes back straight away from the same source. But if you never give more and you have so much to offer, it will never come back. And so you become an entrepreneur with the mindset of, I'm not paid to do this. You're not going to go far, because if you don't get paid, there's only one person you can blame. There's no coworker, there is no boss, it's really you, right? So I think straight away you have to figure out a lot of things. You have to face a lot of your fears, a lot of your limitations, a lot of your procrastinations, ups and downs, and you start to realize that, in my personal case, there was the fear of like putting myself out there.
Putting yourself out there.
Yeah, in form of marketing, in forms of selling, in forms of like just, hey, I'm not a scuba diving instructor anymore. I do this now. So just being seen in that new way, shifting my own identity from this label to that label. And hey, like I remember having the thought, oh, I'm too young to help others. I don't have the experience. I mean, look at those guys. They've been on the market doing this for forever, the doctors, or they have all these things. So you compare. And what ended up happening is that I was playing safe. I was procrastinating. I was doing, I'm going to get my website first. I'm going to do my business card first. All those things that really don't really matter. What you want to do is expose yourself to the right people.
And talking about exposing, I know that you told me this story, and I would love it if you would share it with the listeners. Your experience when you first posted your video for your business. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because this was the moment when I think, posting videos and everything on Facebook became very popular, right? And obviously you have a business, you want to be seen, you want to share your knowledge, you want to attract, all those potential clients, and video content is a great way to do it online. The challenge is I was terrified to posting the video. And it sounds so weird today, because I've got hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel, and I feel like, oh my God, what was that about? But I remember the fear of like, what are people gonna say? And it's just that crippling fear that maybe logically makes no sense, but it was such a big weight to overcome. So I used to make videos and, watch them and be like, I don't like my voice. I don't like the intro. I don't like the ending. I don't like the, so I was like in this phase, I'm just gonna prepare. I'm going to make videos, I'm going to prepare, and one day I'll post them. And week passed, and I remember after 4 weeks, I was like, oh my God, this is again the moment where we're talking about courage. You just have to freaking do it, and be like, if you don't post it now, when will you post it? So
how long did it take you to post your first video?
About a month.
It took you a month.
And I was making a lot of video. It wasn't like I made 2 videos and then I was like, done.
Yeah.
I was training, more procrastinating, to be honest. But I felt like the training was helpful on some level. But the fear never disappeared. There's this great quote do the thing, and then you will have the power. And most of us are waiting to have the power for the fear to be gone before you do the thing. And I think the one thing that really happens is that when you do it, often more than once, that's when the fear really melts away. And then you look back and you're like, what was I ever afraid?
Why was I even afraid, right?
And so when I posted my first video, funny story is that I posted it, I left the phone home and left the home, and then I went to Starbucks to drink a coffee, read a book, because I didn't want to see the aftermath of what are people going to say, did anybody watch it, and so on. But the funny thing is that some people did, and I've got some very nice comments from friends. Oh, thank you for posting, wishing you well. So some very nice comment, nothing groundbreaking, but it just made me realize how silly those 4 weeks have been, right? And I mean, if you think about things like that, if you do it there, where else do you do this type of behaviors where this could be really helpful? There's very low risk, and you're still not doing it.
But you have to summon that courage. And so what did it for you eventually? 4 weeks. It took you 4 weeks to post your first video. And you know what? That is no small feat, because it is hard. For those who are creators, they will get that. Some people have a harder time than others, but there is this thing, putting yourself out there, right? So eventually you put it out there. What was it that made you do that finally?
I think I got fed up with myself, with my own bullshit, so to speak. And I think you reach a point where, what am I doing? It's that thing where, okay, here I am helping people overcome all these things, and I let my own stuff block me. And I think the frustration overcame the fear. And I think that's a good thing, because sometimes that can really help you break through when you're done with that. Let's just go, and you do it. And I think that's really what it took, just letting that frustration be used as a fuel.
Yeah. You also talk about, when you talk about courage, you also talk about doing things in small steps, like take small risks. Again, why is that important?
Because often people want to take the big step and they choke on it, and they get overwhelmed, and they get, I want to do everything. You take the classic example of, I want to lose weight. So I go on a hardcore diet, and I buy the new shoes and the new outfit, and I go to the new gym, and I go on this new crazy working out schedule. And it's just so not sustainable, because it's so not them, and ultimately they just choke, they get overwhelmed, they just go back to what they do. And I think in my personal life, when you take one step at a time, you start, okay, where am I? Where do I want to go? What are some of the steps I can take? Okay, let me start by reducing sugar first. Let me start by walking more. Let me start by going for a little jog. Let me start by just doing something in steps that I can then become more comfortable at, increase, measure results, and not get overwhelmed, not get into this phase where I just feel like it's too much. I don't even know where to start.
What about as an entrepreneur? Can you give us an example of how you took those baby steps and continue to develop your courage muscle?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is even more critical when you start your own business, because first, when you start, of course, it can be very overwhelming, because, okay, here I am, and now I have to do all those things, and you want to do all those things. But what is it that really makes the needle move? And for me, okay, if I look at my YouTube channel, I knew that, okay, in the long run, I want my YouTube channel to do well, to generate money, clients, the whole thing. But where do you start? Okay, I gotta first pick a niche, create my channel, and be like, okay, what does it look like? What does it sustainably look like for me to post video, make content? I didn't know much about editing. I didn't know much about making thumbnails. I didn't know much about the whole game of YouTube. So it's like, okay, let me just first start with making videos with what I have, meaning just my phone. I got no mic, I got no light, I got no fancy things, but I'm just gonna make videos, and then I'm gonna try to edit them with that new software I got. I'm gonna look at tutorials. So you see, you're first posting the video, because that's really the most important. Get your content out there. Because as long as you're trying to get the light right, and the mic right, and this right, and that right, and make courses, and look at all those things, you're still not doing what's really making the needle move, meaning like, let me get some content out there, get some subscribers, share my message and see what happens. Yeah. And in the process, you're already getting better. So then it's like, okay, you're doing that for a little while, and then how can I get better at editing? How can I buy a mic now? How can I figure out the light? How can I figure out a better background? How do I make better thumbnail, And then before you know it, 6 months down the track, if you took all the steps and you keep stretching, you end up in a very different place. And I think this is one example where it's easier to take small steps to manage them and to stay consistent with them than if you're trying to do everything in one go and then it doesn't work.
For sure. And I can relate to that as well. When I was doing some videos of my own, I realized also that you make the video, you put it out there, and then you can take a look at your video and see the mistakes you made and build on that. Because if you just spend all your time to be so perfect, first of all, there's no such thing as perfect. I truly believe that. It's just through experience that you will get better. So it would make sense to just get the needle moving by putting out, your content and then looking back at it and seeing how you can improve. For sure. Okay, going back to courage, another point that you talk about is visualization.
Yeah, 100%. If people are listening and they're like, oh my God, what is that? Visualization is basically imagination, visualization, mental rehearsal, a lot of name for the same thing, really. It's just sitting down, relaxing, and then you visualize whatever it is that you want to achieve, whether it's in your behavior, losing weight, making those videos, this type of things. And the power of visualization is that you can train yourself ahead of time for whatever you want to grow. For example, you may be scared of going on your own podcast or for the interview coming up, for your 6 months review or whatever, right? And you want to do well at that PowerPoint presentation. So you can train in your mind. You can, create that meeting room, and you can just see yourself delivering in a way where you feel confident enough, where you feel good about yourself. And what happens is that you're really programming your mind for that event. So instead of like seeing the worst case scenario and worrying about it, or just having the same old thoughts, you're using your mind to condition it toward a particular outcome. And for me, visualization is one of the things that I do every day, morning, evening, with my meditation. And I often give this analogy to people. If your mind is like a GPS, you need a clear destination, because otherwise you're just going to be drifting, right? And most people, the destination that they've set for themselves is what they don't want, because that's all they can focus on. That's all they think about. They wake up, it's the problem, the challenges. I don't like this, I don't like that. I have all of these things. And so their focus is so directed towards certain things they don't want to experience. And they're very clear with what I don't want, but they struggle to tell you, what do I really want instead? Unfortunately, what people don't really understand is that the mind is just meant to give you more what you focus on, because that's where you give your attention, that's what you think about, that's where you take action. So, our mind is just so good. Just like Google, if you tell it exactly what you want, it's going to give you a great result, right, in a search. So if you can visualize, and if you can start to create those mental pictures, you'll be amazed by the result of what your mind can create. And that's why a lot of people, whether there's entrepreneurs or sport people or UFC champions, you'll hear them a lot talking about visualization or mental rehearsal or shadow boxing, whatever terms they use, because they're training their mind. They're training themselves ahead of time to perform the way they want to perform.
So here's a question for you. Did you visualize today's conversation?
I had a picture of like the outcome, meaning and this is something I do very fast throughout the day. So before I record a YouTube video, I see it as being successful, right? So I don't spend like 20 minutes, right? But I create a picture of like, okay, it's looking successful, right? And for today, I was just like, the picture I had is basically I left, I'm on the BTS, I just felt like it was a great conversation. So it's not about often like a groundbreaking movie, something like that, but it's just being clear, like having an intention for how I want this thing to go.
And this helps you build courage when you're dealing with new situations? or situations that you might be nervous about or stepping outside your comfort zone. This is part of the process, you're saying.
What I'm saying is we've got to be very intentional with our thoughts, with our mind, with our what goes on in our mind, and what you focus on always end up determining your reality. It's like if you ever drive a bike or a car or so on, you know that if you focus on the wall, your car just tends to go on the wall, and that's why, like, when you take a big curve, when you look toward where you want to go, you cannot just naturally turn just enough. But if you look at, especially if you drive a bike and you're driving in between your two cars, if you're looking at the side view mirror and you're like, oh my God, am I going to hit it? You just start to lean toward there and you start to become very shaky. So it shows you like the importance of just having a clear focus. So having a mental picture, helps you. How does it help you build courage? Because you're like, okay, if I focus more on the possible outcome of success versus on the fear or all the things that could go wrong, well, it's easier for me to do it. Does that make sense? But if I focus on the fear, on the rejection, on all the things that might happen, it's easier to be overwhelmed by your fear, or to delay, or to be in this space where I don't feel like doing it today, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah. You talk also a lot about overcoming fear and developing courage in some of your videos.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would say to the audience that they need to do? Like, how do people build their courage muscle? That's something else you also have talked to me about, that you need to build your courage muscle. But how do you do that?
Yeah. I think it's a very important question. I think this answer is very context dependent because everybody's a bit different where they start, and it's easier to be courageous in some aspect where you feel like you're better than in aspects that are completely new or where you're starting out. I think ultimately it has a lot to do with our self-confidence, our self-esteem. If you have a lot of insecurities to start with, you will most naturally try to hide them. You will most naturally try to avoid putting yourself in a situation where you can be criticized, or feeling embarrassed and so on. So this is where you'll have more challenges to harness your courage, because your fears are there. You might not be aware of it, but in terms of what you do, it's affecting you, right? So when people tend to have a greater sense of self-belief and self-esteem, it's easier to take a chance, because you're coming from the place of like more certainty in who you are and how you happy even if it doesn't really work out the way you want the first time, because you're not so obsessed with, oh my God, people are gonna laugh, oh my God, people, what I'm gonna say. You're more okay with the experience, you're more okay with the possibility of failure, the possibility of losing face, the possibility of telling people, well, I made a fool of myself. Yeah. And so when you already have that sense of confidence, going over that bridge becomes easier. So to answer your question, I think what could help a lot of people is, working on themselves. Something I talk a lot on my channel is the power of our self-image. And I feel that a lot of people see themselves smaller than they really are. We can be very limiting. I'll give you an example. I was with my parents in January when they were here, right? And I said that because we were in one of those malls. And I remember walking around with my mom, and we wanted to get lunch, and she stopped in one of the shops, and I wasn't really thinking much, and she was browsing at this and that, whatever, And at some point she just said, "Oh, it's a nice shop, but this is a bit expensive. This is not for us." And this is when I snap out of my daydreaming. I didn't say anything on the moment. I was like, I'm just aware of this thing. And then we're having our lunch, and I'm like, earlier in the shop, you said, what do you mean by this is not for us? And she was like, I'm not sure. It's just, it was just like a matter of saying things. But when you listen to people, they will tell you their story, their limitation, and they're not even aware of it. What she's really saying is that it's not really a money problem, but it's a perception problem. The fact that, well, maybe I don't deserve that big of a bag at that price. I can't justify it for myself. It just shows you that there's a limitation there, and it's self made, right? Because you could say, okay, she has the money, why not? But there is a block. There is somewhere, well, this is not for me, but it's for them. And how many people have this, well, I really want a better life, a better job, traveling, going, doing this, but I couldn't. They can because of this, because of that, but somehow I cannot. And when you put yourself in a situation like that, you have to realize that you're only disempowering yourself, because on some level you have to ask yourself, when did you decide that? When did you decide that this is all you're worth? That whatever you're settling with or wherever you're not going that you really want to go, you can't have it because of X, Y reason. Because as long as that story and identity is there, you'll never outgrow it, because you want to remain consistent with who you are. This is me, yeah?
And it's difficult to change the story you tell yourself. That requires like a lot of digging into your psyche and working on yourself, right? Because the stories we keep repeating just keep getting reinforced. But what you're saying is, if I understand, you have to develop self-confidence in order to have courage.
Yeah, let me tell you a personal story there that I think will illustrate this. I'm very tall, for people who are not listening. I'm 1 meter 96. So at some point when I was young, 13, 14, 15, I started growing very tall, faster than most people, and growing further. And so you start to just get those comments, why are you so tall? Why are you growing so tall? And you just start to feel out of space, out of place. And I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I was struggling with insecurity, with shyness, and, being self-conscious about my height and just pimple I used to have back then. For me, like, that height started to becoming a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you start to create this, self-perception, self-image that I'm too tall, as like it's negative.
Did people say it was a negative, or did you just start thinking it was?
I started taking it in this way. So what I started doing, ironically, is make myself smaller. You don't stand in the middle. You hide in a corner. You're sitting down, or you leaning out. So in all those subtle ways, it affects you. And then people give you that comment, you become embarrassed. It starts to create that embarrassment. That's like, oh my God, there is that flow. Until that, and this is when I was, in my early 20s, I was, I told you, doing all that personal development stuff. And this is when I started to realize, oh, I've got a big limiting belief there about my own body, right? And so I started to realize that if you cannot change your height, your body, you might as well see it as a gift. So what I started to do is like, okay, whenever I get that comment, which is very often, more than people would know, I'm going to say thank you. So instead of like being awkward and I don't know what to say, I'm just going to say thank you. And at the beginning, it was difficult because I wasn't used to that. And so the courage came in and like, okay, no, I'm really going to do it. No matter what people say and how they respond when I say this, but I'm done with this. So at the beginning, saying thank you was very uncomfortable, but progressively it became much more comfortable up to the point where like it really started shifting and taking into compliments those things. And today I'm very comfortable with my height, and that opened up a lot of things. We were talking about confidence, about being good in your skin, and so on. Obviously, we're talking about being seen earlier. So if you're self-conscious about your look, about your skin, about whatever, it's so much harder to put yourself out there. Yeah, but if you start to feel more confident in yourself, it becomes easier. It's not easy 100%, but it's easier. So that's one of the story where, like overcoming that self-consciousness was a big deal for me. Yeah.
And that built courage. And again, if you look at your story, it's clear it was built over time. Like you started with the thank you, and then later you start getting comfortable. And then today you are so okay that you're like, you know what? I love how tall I am.
Yeah, and it happens, and one day you realize, you look back and you're like, it's weird that I used to be this way. It's the funniest thing. You just look back and you're like, But
you've grown, right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
And then you take that principle and you apply it to other parts of your life. If you can, that's the thing that we always find it. So I'm not going to say we, but I know even myself, it's difficult sometimes, even if you know the lesson. Like, this sounds so silly, I should just do this. But it's hard in the moment to try to overcome something that maybe is fearful for you at the time. Then that is why it's so interesting to hear your perspective as a mindset coach. Like, how do you overcome fears and how do you build courage? And talking about that, there's also something I have here, and this is a quote from one of your videos. You say, fear never disappears completely. Okay, so if that is the case, but how do you tell people who are still afraid to step outside of their comfort zone because they feel afraid, they feel uncomfortable? How can they overcome that, even though you say fear never disappears completely?
Yeah, and I think you have to give reality to people and not just a rainbow fairy tale that you'll be immune forever of your fears, because you might the fear might be gone in that particular thing, right? That okay, I used to be afraid of posting videos, I'm not anymore, right? But there'll be always fear for the next thing, and the next thing where you stretch out, and the next thing that is now out of your comfort zone, the fear will come up. So it's realizing that, okay, fear is part of the human experience, that I have this fear, fine. I'm not going to make it a big deal. I can accept that I feel afraid about this thing. I'm not going to, it's like, okay, I'm going to see it for what it is, but not making bigger than what it is. But also realize that the only way through the fear, or as Joseph Campbell said, like your treasure is in the cave you're afraid to enter, right? It doesn't mean that you won't be afraid in a cave once you're inside, right? But it's like, this is exactly what you need. Yeah.
And Joseph Campbell is the mythologist.
Correct.
In the 20th century.
Yeah.
I studied him a bit in university. Yeah, he has a wonderful idea about the hero's journey.
100%.
Yeah. So talking about facing difficulties, when you became an entrepreneur, what would you say was your greatest challenge, your greatest fear that you faced as an entrepreneur, and how did you overcome it?
God, I had
I imagine you had several.
Yeah, I think losing everything was probably the biggest one. As in, it's not going to work out, I'm going to lose everything, and what do I do then? That fear that's always at the back of your mind. What if it doesn't work out? What if I lose this client? What if money doesn't come in? What if, there's that fear where, oh my God, I'm just like 1 month away from being completely on the street, not knowing what's happening next.
Wow.
And I think that's the constant pressure that can be very draining, very difficult to deal with. And it was, 100%. Like today, obviously things are much different, and there's much more comfort and safety and But starting out, that's why I say it's a big spiritual journey, because you have to face up a lot of your own limitation. And if I'm sure anybody who has started their own business can relate, like you cannot keep those limitations in place and expect your business to grow, because your business is a direct reflection of who you are. I remember having a lot of insecurities around money, and money is a loaded subject for a lot of people. So a lot of us are taught that money is bad, rich people are greedy, all those conventional ideas, but we rarely understand the effect and the dynamics that it plays. I had also a lot of belief about sales. Don't be pushy, because you'll be seen in a bad way. I didn't want to be seen in a bad way. So I was very soft in the way I was selling. Think about it. Come back to me. Which, if anybody is in sales here or on the business, they know this is not good, because you gotta also respect yourself enough, and this is okay. You gotta believe in your product, believe in your service, believe in yourself, meaning like I can deliver, I can help. And if I truly believe that, I truly believe that people really need it. If there's a real need, then it's worth for them investing the money. So it's not about being pushy, but it's understanding that selling is serving.
Mm-hmm. So when you were in this situation where the challenge was, as an entrepreneur, the financial challenge. So am I understanding correctly that you were able to overcome that because you had faith in yourself?
I think it was a combination of things. I think it was definitely I think at that time I had more faith in just something somehow will work out. So God, universe, whatever. I had some faith that I'm gonna make it somehow. So there was just a lot of faith that I don't know how. It's like you drive at night and you don't know. You cannot see the end of the road. You can only see the flashlight, what the light is showing you on the road, and you cannot just know it's taking you somewhere. I think that's where I was. I think when I started over and over and over again, putting ourselves out there, learning, overcoming certain beliefs, working on myself and doing the work every day, showing up every day, I think over time what starts to happen is that things fall into place. They fall into place and you might not see the result like every single day, but then after a couple of months you look back and you're in a better place because you consistently upgraded your game, you learn that, you overcome this, you stretch yourself. So it was really a combination of keep doing it, keep showing up. And being a roller coaster, being an entrepreneur can be a roller coaster. In one day, you can experience everything. The joy, the abundance, and then depression, the anxiety, the worry, and it's back up. So
it's a roller coaster.
Yeah, you take it as it is. But the greatest lesson of entrepreneurship is it has ultimately a lot to do with you. It's easy to blame the clients, the market, the algorithm, and so on. But it's become so much easier when you take responsibility for how did I create that? Why am I not there yet? What am I not doing? What am I afraid of doing? How am I, holding myself back, so to speak? And always having those questions in mind, I think led me to be able to pivot certain things, do certain things, try something new, and ultimately with also a lot of things that just happen. Actually, as I'm saying this, I have a story in mind which I think was the biggest breakthrough. I don't know if we...
Sure, share
it. I was in a minivan one day, and I think this was one of the days when the roller coaster was crashing down. I was feeling like I want to quit everything. Yeah, I think that was the peak of my time, where it was in 2018. Around that time, I'm not sure exactly, but around that time, I was coming out from a relationship that didn't work out, and I felt like my business wasn't exactly where I wanted. I felt like I've been at it for a while. Where is everything going? And I was reading a book, and in that book, basically, there was a sentence, right? And the sentence was okay, if you want your life to change, you have to change. And I was like, okay, I've heard that before, but sometimes you hear things 10,000 times and the 10,001 hits differently.
And it depends sometimes who says it, right? Or how you hear it.
That's right. Or when, I guess.
Or when, yeah.
And that day it just clicked, something clicked. And this is when I really also started to deep dive into what is called, self-image psychology, right? And I started to realize that a lot of my attitude I still had a lot of victim mentality for a lot of things. And that big moment of let me own up to that, I think allowed me to start really, okay, I'm not going to see myself as a victim. I'm not going to, feel like I'm powerless and so on. There was a moment there when I really started to work harder on myself that the business really started picking up after that. Because I don't know, my attitude, I guess, or something deeply in me, in how I used to see myself, drastically shifted in a month after that. Okay, I'm done with the blaming and the complaining. Yeah.
And that's what you were talking about earlier, how you have to take responsibility for your own actions when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So there was that moment where it just clicked for you.
Yeah.
So
that was a big day. Yeah.
So talking about your business, how is it today?
It's in a very good place. I'm happy to say my YouTube channel is growing as well. I think I'm excited for where I want to take it, how it's growing. I'm working with some amazing people. I feel like it's very rewarding. And it's easier, when you're in that place. Of course, you always have challenges. You always think about what's next. There's always all of that. But I feel like I have more understanding of myself. I feel like I'm myself in a better place. I have a I think what's very important is that I have a routine that helps me keep my head in the game. I'm also understanding that you still have to keep growing, you still have to explore, you still have to pick up AI, you still have to learn all those things that are coming up.
You still have to have courage to keep
yeah,
going forward.
it's not like, okay, I made it here and now I stop. It's like I know there's another level, but I'm approaching life, I think, through all those experiences, all those adversity has created, I think, more stillness in me. So I'm able to deal with more adversity than before. And I think that's why life rewards you with more, because you're able to take more. So I think that's why I truly believe that having things like meditation, visualization, and those mindset exercise, your daily gratitude journaling, I've been, since 2018, since around the time, things I've been doing every day, with rare exceptions. And I think when you do those things every single day, what you start to see is like this compound effect of like, you don't see much, and then one day just boom, it starts to take off. And you look back and you're like, wow, these things have been influencing me in many ways.
For the people who want to become entrepreneurs and are too scared to do it, they don't have the courage. You've done this journey and you're continuing to do so. What would you tell them?
I think first thing is, being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. I think that's the reality there. And I'm not saying don't, but I'm just saying it's easy when you see people on social media, they're on the yacht, private jet, they have this fake almost life of telling you, oh, just join my course and you'll be making six figures in no time. Reality is often very different. And, I've had many clients who went from, working in a place and starting their own business. And it's a journey. It's a journey. And if you go with it, if you give yourself the chance and you're smart with it, I think it can be a beautiful journey, life-changing journey, definitely. But don't do it just because you feel like it's going to be easier than your job. That's really a dangerous thought, because I feel like you're in for a surprise. If you feel like you want to do it because you want more free time, you don't want an annoying boss, I think you should appreciate more what you have right now and start first maybe on a side, or start in a way that makes you feel safe. Because often when I see with people I talk to, or whether they want to become coaches or whatever they want to do, the money can be the first biggest hurdle. Okay, I wanna do it, but what if I don't make the money? And I think this is something people should consider before jumping in blindly, right? It's like there's a thing to consider, especially if you have a house and kids and mortgage and people are in different places. So if you're very comfortable and you got savings that can get you through it, then awesome, good for you. If you don't, be smart about it. Start on the weekend, start on the evening. You can do amazing things just on your free time, right? But do it for the right reason, not to escape something, but because you want to grow something, you want to give something, you want to share something. I think that's very important.
So let's say there's someone out there who is going to do it for the right reason.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that you mentioned, that's great. That's right. But they just don't have that courage, not even to post that first video on social media. They're too scared. They're too scared to walk into this unknown world. What do you tell them?
I would say start small. Honestly, don't think about the everything you need, the website, the cars, this. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to know every step of the way. Think of that analogy of the car driving in the night. What's the first thing I can do? Where can I start today? What can I do today and tomorrow and every single day? Little things that can move the needle. And if it's like as simple as posting a video, then make a decision that, I don't know, by the end of the week it's going to be out, and that you're gonna be making not only this one but the next one and also the next one.
And part of the fun I'm noticing is that these doors pop up that you didn't see before as you go on your journey.
Yeah.
right? So you can't really plan for everything. It's just about taking that initial step, having the courage to move forward with your idea, regardless of how much fear you have. Just do it. Just do a little bit at a time.
Yeah. It's, I think it's so, you're so right. You never know how things will unfold. Often life has its own way of, it's never a straight line. It's always like somehow you take detours or you end up in a very different place that is actually better. And you could not have foreseen, just like when I started becoming a scuba diving instructor, I had no idea, that, 2 years later I'll be in a very different space. And if you start today with that one video, you don't know where it could lead you. If you look at, we're doing a podcast now, and if you look at the biggest name in the game, maybe like Joe Rogan, they started by, talking shit on with his friend and recording it, posting it online. People liked it, and many years later, it's massive. Mm-hmm. And it all started with, let's do that one episode first, or that one video, or that one call, or that one, how to bake a pie thing. I don't know, it's that the one thing.
The one action, right?
Yeah.
Talking about all of this, looking back, since the time you left France, would you say that it was your persistence to step outside of your comfort zone and develop your courage muscle that has allowed you to be an entrepreneur today?
I think so. I think he was definitely a big part of it. Without the courage to start your own business, it was like, okay, literally it was like overnight, okay, I'm going to go back to Australia, take this course, I'm selling all my diving gear, I'm not coming back. That was the decision, and without making those kind of decisions, sometimes just going all in, without the courage, but also the persistence when it's not working the way you expected it, not going the way you expected it, and you feel like, oh my God, what am I going to do next? Like in those moments where you're just able to go one more day, one more week, one more month. I think those are the moments that eventually make you look back and be like, thank God I didn't just drop everything then. Yeah.
So for the listeners who want to connect with you, want to learn more about your business, how can they connect with you?
All over social media, Facebook, Instagram. My YouTube channel is a good place for a lot of resources. And you can find it by just typing my name, Nenad Popadic. And you'll find it on YouTube, you'll find it on Instagram, you'll find it on Facebook.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about when it comes to courage?
I think, in closing, I'll say I think it's a life journey. Courage is definitely something that we all have. It's not something that just a few of us have and the others don't have. I think all of us have courage in some areas and can use some more in another area. But I think it's a beautiful thing to do. And this is despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, progress equals happiness. You post that first video, there's the fear, yes, but there's also the high that comes after that, where you feel alive, where you feel excited, where you feel like happy, I did it, and you can, that's what I said, without the courage is really no fulfillment, right? And when you step out of your comfort zone, you just get high on your own supply and you feel like, oh my God, I'm growing, I'm developing, life becomes just very exciting. So I think it's one of the biggest reward after taking that courageous step. You get the high and the happiness that comes with it. And I think ultimately, that's what life really is about. Yeah.
There you have it. Nenad tells us it is possible to become an entrepreneur, but it does take courage. Whether it's slowly stepping outside of your comfort zone, taking baby steps, or visualizing your wins, all these help to develop your courage muscle, according to Nenad. Today, why not just take a minute for yourself and visualize a small task you want to accomplish, and then just do it. Thanks for joining me today. I know this episode was a long one, so I really want to thank you for your attention and time. Our TXP community is slowly but surely growing. Still, I would love to have your help. If you like the X Perspective podcast, please tell your family and friends about it. Anyone who is interested can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcast platform. Thanks again for listening. See you in episode 6.